Hey everyone, it's Ron Johnson, and this is the Ron Johnson Show on Locked On Sports Minnesota. Great show today. We are going to talk about the women's championship game. We have to talk about it. Caitlyn Clark, Angel Reese. It's polarizing. We know it, so we're going to have to talk about that. I got some thoughts on this one, but the Timberwolves, they lost to the Portland Trailblazers. That was one of the games I picked on KFan Radio that I said, this is a for sure win. The Portland Trailblazers have put Dame Lillard to rest. This is an easy one. And they collapsed. We got to talk about that next, coming up on the Ron Johnson Show.
Locked On Sports Minnesota podcasts. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. Now the Ron Johnson Show. On the field, in the broadcast booth, Ron Johnson is Minnesota sports. He's played with them, hung out with them, and grown up with all the big names in Minnesota sports. They're hanging out with Ron Johnson. It's the Ron Johnson Show on the Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast. And it starts now.
Hey everyone, it's Monday morning and everybody is up talking about Caitlyn Clark and Angel Reese, LSU, Iowa. Caitlyn Clark, I will say this, she did something to Minnesota that I never thought anybody would do. But we'll talk about that in the second segment. Starting off, we have to talk about this Timberwolves team. We have to, because they should be in a position right now to win at least 4 to 5 games, I thought. And the Portland Trail Blazers were one of them because Damian Lillard, he put it all to rest and said, I'm done for the season. I'm going into the booth. I'm about to drop another hot track. And they lost. They lost to the Trail Blazers, who probably don't even care right now. Now, the players themselves, they're going to win this game. Like, they're going to go play as hard as they can. They're not going to tank ever. They're going to go play. But as a whole, the organization at this point just doesn't care. And the Timberwolves could not find a way to put it together. The Lakers, we talked about that. So we'll talk about the Lakers' correlation to this Trailblazers game. And is this a sign for the rest of the season? Because if so, it's going to be an early exit in the play-in game. But this episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, the official sportsbook of Locked On. Make every moment more. Just visit FanDuel.com/Locked On today to get started. And we know those parlays are done with the women's Final Four, but you still have the men's championship game, and we'll talk about that in the Daily 3. But before I bring my producer, Sam Extra, remember, you can download Amazon Fire and the Roku app. You can download Locked On Sports Minnesota right there on the app. Get all your videos, all your shows right there on your TV. Just search Locked On Sports Minnesota right there on your Amazon Fire or your Roku device, and we'll be right there with you. Well, as I bring Sam Extra to the show, Sam, the Minnesota Timberwolves are a team to me that I felt like on paper. I called them early on, I called them paper champions because when you put their numbers up, you got Rudy Gobert, you got Karl-Anthony Towns, best big man shooter in the game. You got Anthony Edwards, I think one of the most dynamic 2 guards in the game. Strong, can shoot, bouncy, aggressive, explosive. So has the ability, in my opinion, to take on guys that are 6'7", 6'8", also guys that are 6'1", 6'2". He's kind of the best of both worlds at that 6'5". He's the combo guard. He can bring the ball up the court. So he gives you that combo guard type of body where if you need to go with a bigger set, or smaller set, he can transition into your 3. If you're going with a normal set, he can be your 2. And if he needs to bring the ball up the court, he can do that as well. But when they get on the court, paper doesn't matter. It's about who's going to play, who's going to show up. And that's the one thing about this Trailblazers team that I thought without Damian Lillard, I would have went on FanDuel and easily took the money line for the Timberwolves. I would have easily said, I think, what were they, a 17-point favorite?
17, 18. It was one of the biggest spreads of all time.
And like, I just, when I saw, and I don't know, maybe it's a sucker bet. Maybe it was a sucker bet. Vegas was like, you know what? Let's give the Timberwolves a huge line. So people would automatically either go with the Timberwolves or they'll say Trailblazers cover. There's no way they lose by 17 and then hope that the Trailblazers get blown out because Dame Lillard's not there. I mean, there's so many, and maybe that's the factor. Maybe that's what they were thinking. Like, look, there's no way the Trailblazers will not cover. So let's do this and let's see if we can get some sucker bets to cover. Because if you just pick the Timberwolves to win, even if you're like, hey, I don't want the points, I just want to go eat, I just want to get money. and I'm going to pick Timberwolves to win. I don't care about the money line. I mean, I don't care about the spread. You still would have lost. I don't get that. And that's what is annoying to me about basketball sometimes, and that's sports in general, but basketball, because if one or two guys who you need to show up don't show up, and the rest of the team starts to feed off of it, and I'll get your thoughts on this, Sam. The Lakers game, we talked to Gabe Henderson. He said it was very lackluster. It said the energy wasn't there. John Krasinski is saying that there was a flu or sickness going around. So maybe it's still residuals of that, because we know, like, when you're sick, it doesn't just go away. Like, you get sick, and then as you start to fight it, your body is still tired, you're exhausted, you're trying to fight this sickness. So maybe that's part of it. But down the stretch right now, if you're trying to really make sure you stay in this play, which, I mean, honestly, I don't see them dropping to 11. I mean, unless just all heck has to break loose. But even at 9 or 10, now you're on the road twice, and you have to win, especially if you're at 10. You're on the road twice. You got to beat the 9, and then you got to beat whoever ends up in the, whoever loses the 7-8 game just to get back into the playoffs as 8. That's a lot. And honestly, I feel like if they end up at 10, they're done. Like, I think they're going to be out 2 games on the road. I just don't know the way this team is acting right now. I don't feel like they could get through that. That's a lot emotionally to get through just to end up at 8 and play the Nuggets. And then you got to deal with Jokic. Like, the Joker is, I mean, they're playing great. I mean, I hate to say it. When I saw that team, I'm like, they don't feel like a number 1 to me. But then you watch them, they're playing good basketball. They're coached well. They're fundamentally sound. And they're going through the big man every time. And he can actually deliver, shoot. He doesn't, like, nothing against it. He doesn't go to the ref and whine every time. So that's just my opinion on that, Sam. I don't know what's going on with the Wolves, but the word collapse just does come to mind. A lot of somber tweets about the Timberwolves. Like, people are licking their wounds, just kind of saying, oh, well, the Wild are still number 1. I mean, it's almost like people are ready to be done and move on to baseball, and hockey playoffs. But I don't know. What are your thoughts?
This Wolves team keeps burning us. Nobody fluctuates between contender and fraud more often than the Timberwolves. We were here a week ago, Ron, talking about the path to the Western Finals, how they're going to be a 6 seed and play the Kings and then take down the Grizzlies. And now we're wondering if they're even going to have a first-round series. I think the flu had something to do with it. It seems like everybody got it. And Krasinski, tweeting that Anthony Edwards was laying down in the tunnel when he was on the bench. And they're trying to play through it right now. Still does not excuse losing to that Portland team that is in full tank mode. The Timberwolves have done this way too often this year, Ron. If they could have just taken care of business against the Charlottes, the San Antonios, the Houstons, the Detroits, the Portlands, they could have 50 wins. But now they don't even have 40 because they can't beat the worst teams in the league. That's been their issue all season long. They played down to their competition. Coaching issue, Anthony Edwards issue. There's a disconnect. For some reason, they can't get ready to play for every game. And that's frustrating. That's really frustrating.
Yeah, because where it stands right now, I mean, there is a chance they could end up at 11. I mean, I hate to say it. You got the Mavericks, who are at 11 right now. And that's a team that people are scared of that could end up in the playoffs, because I truly believe, because the Mavericks are 1 game behind the Thunder. If the Mavericks end up at 10, lights out. Like, I think the Mavericks can beat the Nuggets. I think the Lakers could beat the Nuggets in a 7-game series. And that's just me. Maybe I'm too starstruck with Kyrie and Luka and LeBron and AD. But when you just watch those teams play, and Kyrie brought this up, Luka's the one that really brought it up because he was just pissed off and upset that they're in every single game. They're scoring a ton of points. And then at the end, they lose. Like, every single Mavericks game, if you watch the highlights, and I'm more of a highlight guy, but they just lost to the Hawks in OT, 130 to 132. Like, that's the stuff that they're talking about. Like, you are winning, and then in the fourth quarter, you make that comeback, and all of a sudden you have to go to OT, and then you lose by 2. Like, that's where the Mavericks, a team like the Mavericks, they truly feel like if we're in this, we have a chance. Like the Heat, they lost by 7. The 76ers, they lost. The Pacers, they blew them out 104 to 127. The Hornets, a team we say the Timberwolves should be able to beat. they lost to them by 6. It's a lot of those games. They lost to the Grizzlies by 4, where Luka's like, they beat the Lakers by 1. So, it's like they're right in there with that Lakers caliber of team that you give them a chip chair and a chance and they're dangerous. Like, that's what poker is about. And that's a team I would not want to play poker against, because they will push everything to the middle of the table when it's time. And that's when the plan is time. I just don't feel like with these 3 games left for the Timberwolves, I don't know if they have enough chips to push to the middle and really be scary. Like, they push to the middle, those chips could get taken because, like you said, Anthony Edwards is laying down in the tunnel. He's tired. So, and this is the other problem. I would say, hey, rest him for the playoffs. Get him ready, give him 3 days, three games off, let him rest. But you can't. You can't, because you're 1 game ahead of 10 and you're 2 games ahead of 11 with 3 to go. And that's the problem. Like, the Jazz, I don't think they care to keep going. But the Mavericks, the best thing for the Timberwolves right now is the Mavericks have to play the Kings. They play the Kings Wednesday. And the Kings are going to most likely beat them unless Luka comes out of nowhere. They also play the Bulls. The Bulls will most likely beat them. Now, the Spurs, who knows there, but I'm guessing the Spurs will lose to the Mavs. But the Bulls and the Kings can help the Timberwolves out and keep them down at 11. And I think that's the saving grace, because even if you end up at 10, you still have a chance. But if you go to 11, you're out. And so I think that's again, you don't want to play. I hate playing that game because people always, oh, well, if they lose, then we're good. Like, you don't want, you can control your own destiny right now and win 3 and probably end up back at 8 and at least host 1 home game, where if you have to play the Lakers, because the Lakers have jumped to 7 now. They were 9 at one point, 10. Now they're jumping to 7. If you play the Lakers to try to get the 7th seed and you don't get it, and you at least can host the last playing game for the 8th seed with the winner of if it's the Pelicans drop below you, it's the Pelicans Thunder. And that's the best case scenario, to be able to host that last playing game to hold on to the 8th spot to play the Nuggets. And then the Lakers could do everybody a favor and beat the Grizzlies, because that's one where mentally, I feel like LeBron could overtake Ja and the Grizzlies. Like, I feel like LeBron and AD, and now you have D'Angelo Russell. Now you do have a guy in D'Angelo Russell who's went at Ja, who's played against Ja and gave them heck when again, the Lakers probably are like, man, I wish we had kept Pat Bev, because Pat Bev and D'Lo were the 2 guys that kind of pissed off the Grizzlies. And, we got rid of Pat Bev and sent him to the Bulls. But, if you think about D'Lo and what he did against the Grizzlies, he had a great, he was playing pretty decent throughout that series. So the Timberwolves, though, like I said, you can blame it on sickness, Sam. You can figure it out, but they have 3 games left. And this is for their season. This is like a mini playoff run. 3 games left. They're the good thing too. Again, they're playing some teams that don't really, want to be in this. They're going to play some teams. They play the Nets, they play the Spurs, and again, those are 2 teams that really don't care right now. And then they do play the Pelicans though, and that's one that they could decide their own fate. That's almost the play-in within the play-in. Like, they could play the Pelicans and then turn around and play the Pelicans again at some point. So. Yep. Spurs, Nets, they don't really care, because those 3 I thought they would have got. I thought they would have get Trailblazers, Nets, Spurs. That's what I said yesterday when we were on. Pelicans, that's the one. But I don't know, Sam. What are your thoughts when you look at that? You got the Nets, Spurs, Pelicans. Can they win 2 out of 3 in your opinion?
Yeah. Well, the Wolves,
can they win all 3? Can they win all 3? I don't know.
The Wolves have strangely become a really terrible home team. They've been a lot pluckier on the road. So maybe going on the road is the best thing for them. Maybe going to play Brooklyn, San Antonio on the road, get away from home, get away from whatever the bad mojo is here. Maybe the guys get healthier and they get back on track. That's been the story. Like, as many times as they have sort of let us down, they always find a way to reel us back in. So maybe this is the time they reel us back in. I am looking at this for the Pelicans, though. If you want to get that 8th seed and have a chance to play the Lakers for the 7, the Pelicans play the Kings, tough game. Grizzlies, tough game. Knicks, tough game. And then it finishes against the Timberwolves. So Minnesota could have a chance on the final day of the season to beat the Pelicans and move up into the 8 or maybe the 7, depending on where the Lakers are at. But keep an eye on those Pelicans, because that's the team right now that they're chasing most.
Yeah, Sam, you're right. That's what I'm looking forward to seeing down the stretch. The Pelicans, they have a tough one. I think everybody has a tough one except the Timberwolves, but We'll see because anything right now, it feels like it's tough for the Timberwolves. So, but remember, people, Locked On Sports is a partner with Care 11. Check out care11.com/locked on for links to every one of our Locked On shows. And coming up in the next segment, we're going to talk about the Final Four, men's and women's. There's a lot going on the men's side. Was it too boring? Is the NIL taking over? Is the transfer portal ruining college basketball? And when I say ruin, that's what the world is saying. I'd say leveling the playing field. We'll talk about that. And then also Caitlyn Clark and Angel Reese. It's been sensational, but I do have a little bit of a thought about that one. Maybe I'll hit that in the Daily 3, but we have a word from our sponsors.
Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. That's America's #1 sports book. And as the NBA playoffs approach, the play-in tournament approaches, it's a great time to get in the action at FanDuel and claim your no-sweat first bet. Up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. Download the FanDuel app. It's safe. It's secure. It is very easy to use, and there's hundreds of ways to bet. Money lines, point totals, spreads, three-pointers made. You can stack your bets up for a same-game parlay and a chance at big payouts. So much good basketball action coming up. And, hey, the national championship is tonight as well. UConn and San Diego State. UConn favored. Don't miss the chance to get your no-sweat first bet up to $1,000 back in bonus bets if your first bet doesn't win. FanDuel.com/locked-on to find out more. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Well, Sam, as we talked about it, the Final Four, men's and women's. Men's championship tonight. I still am not a fan of Monday night championships. Some people are like, oh, well, Sunday you can't stay up and party anyway, and you gotta go to work the next day. So what's the difference in a Monday? I'm like, well, Monday, I feel like life happens. Like you got work, you got kids stuff, you got school, you got homework. Like to me, a Monday that's just me though. But also too, if you want to say you want to be at the championship, you're now having to miss a full day of work Monday versus I go Sunday and then maybe I fly back Sunday night, or I fly back Monday morning and I can still get my Monday out the way. That's just me though. I just feel like this Monday is weird. It takes an extra day away from families because that's just the assumption that everybody can just miss a Monday of work to support their kid and be at their kid's championship game. But again, that's neither here nor there. That's not what we're talking about. But we're talking about the men's championship game. And let's start there. And we're going to talk women's as well. But I'm going to start with the men's. Here's the thing with the men's championship to me, and I'm seeing a lot of tweets about this. I saw Ryan Clark tweet about it. Ryan Clark from ESPN, friend of the show, he tweeted that the women's Final Four, I know more names and players than I do in the men's. Now, one, you have to look at your source. Ryan Clark went to LSU, so of course he's going to know more LSU names. But when I started doing the math, even with the Elite Eight, Haley Van Lith at Louisville, I'm like, I thought about the men's. I'm like, I don't know a lot of these men's names. Like, I don't know, there wasn't like a, you look back to the days of again, Fab Five. You got Kentucky when they had their great runs. You got the Dukies with Tyus and Okafor and some of those names that would pop up. You got NC with what's his name? Baycock. You got big names at some of these blue bloods, Kansas. The names you're hearing, the guys that can shoot. When you look at FAU, San Diego State, I guarantee you can sit down with a lot of ESPN, CBS, NBC, everybody. Like you can sit there and ask right away, and this is don't give them time to study. Who's some of the players on FAU? They're not going to be able to give you a name right off the bat. Same with San Diego State. You might be able to say one name maybe because you heard some stories about transferring and other stuff, but you don't know. I knew more about Steve Fisher's son, who's suffering from ALS, who was under Steve Fisher, former Michigan coach, who's at San Diego State. Which, if you haven't heard that story, people go read it. It's really heartwarming. It's sad as well. But his son was on his staff when he was coaching at San Diego State. He stayed along with the new staff, but he is suffering from ALS, and he's now no movement in his arms and legs. But still finds a way to coach. They found a machine that can still help him coach, convey the message that he's trying to get to the players and so on and so forth. And so those players were playing for something different. I feel like that's almost destiny. The way that whole ending happened with the big shot, that's like destiny. That's one of those things where you then going to hear this story talked about today, probably with Steve Fisher's son because Steve Fisher, goes to the games because he retired, actually, they said, to take care of his son when he found out his son had ALS. He's like, look, I'm done. I want to be there to take care of my son. And one of the best moments reading about Steve Fisher said, he would be at his son's house to help, get the kids to bed, help whatever, help get his son to bed, has no use of his legs and arms. And he said, every day, I want to do this, like, because my wife went through breast cancer, and I want to start. My wife does this every once in a while, but I want to make sure we're doing this more, maybe with our kids. But he said their family every night says, "What are we thankful for?" or what are we happy about today? Because he said there's a lot we could complain about. Dad, is dying. Like, this is a disease they don't have an answer for, so it's terminal right now, at least. And no use of his legs and arms. Eventually the muscles in his throat give out and he can't breathe. And so they don't want to focus on that. They focus on the positives every night. Like, what was something good today? And Steve Fisher said he sits back and he's in awe that they don't complain. And so I think that's cool. Like, that's cool to me, for Steve Fisher to find grace, God's goodness in this whole process of his son's dying from ALS. And that's what he sees. He sees it in the kids and the wife and how they're handling it. His son got married early and had a kid early because when he was diagnosed with ALS, he's like, he knew this was coming. He wanted to be able to walk down the aisle. He wanted to be able to see and have kids. That was part of the reason why he got married so quick, they said, because as soon as he got diagnosed, he's like, look, I know you're the one. I don't have time. And I think when if people were faced, somebody else told me that too, which I hate this saying, but they're like, basically, I'm not going to use the way they say it, but they're like, look, if you're going to die, what's something you would do? Or if you knew life or death, what's the decision you would make right now? Like, what would you do? And I kind of like that, because it's like, sometimes we don't make decisions because we think we have time. We don't choose things because we think we have time. But that's just one side of San Diego State. Sorry to go on about that. It had nothing to do with the game, but that's one side of San Diego State. And that's what I took away from the Final Four. I'm taking away more of the stories than the actual game. Miami. You got Miami on the other side. And you got UConn, who's a blue blood. Miami's storyline was NIL. 800,000 to one player, 100,000 to another player. So I don't even really know those players' names, but I know they got $900,000 between two players to come to Miami. You look at UConn, though, that's the true blue blood. But do we know their names per se? Yes and no. But with women, we knew Angel Reese's name. We knew Caitlyn Clark's name. We knew Haley Van Lift's name. We knew about the South Carolina Gamecocks and Dawn Staley. We knew about Kim Mulkey. I feel like the women's coaches were higher and bigger than the men's coaches. You know what I mean? Like, so I do agree with Ryan Clark in that. Like, it did feel that way with the Final Four. And so NIL changed the scope of it. Transfer portal for sure, because players aren't sticking around for 3-4 years to even get to know their names. Now for those out there that know the story, I'm not going to let you tell me like, oh, Ron, you're forgetting Angel Reese transfer. Yeah, she did transfer from Maryland. She was the number 2 player in the country. For those that didn't know that, she was the number 2 high school player in the country, went to Maryland, but broke her ankle. And so she broke her ankle. They cut her, which is dirty. They kind of cut her. They cut down her, like they kind of like put her off to the side. And then she did stick around and earn her way back because she was healthy, but she wasn't getting the time and minutes she thought she should be getting. So she transferred. And when she transferred, this is how I know sometimes it's not the right situation. When she said she was transferring, she got called by South Carolina, LSU, and one other it was one other team like in the final, like Elite Eight. Like it was like Louisville, maybe. It was like LSU, Louisville, South Carolina. Oh, Tennessee. Sorry, Tennessee was the other one. She got called by all the greats. Like all the greats reached out to her in the transfer portal. And so then she got to pick, the best one. And she could have picked South Carolina. She could have picked South Carolina and went and won. She would have won the national championship with them probably. But she picked LSU, and now she gets to win herself a national championship. And Maryland is good too. Let's not forget that. Maryland is a good team as well. Like Maryland is really good. They just didn't do her right. They did her dirty. And so she's like, look, I'm out of here. But when you think about the women's, the names and the coaches there, they were a little bit more sensational. Caitlyn Clark made this tournament great. The women's tournament, in my opinion, was way more exciting than the men's. When you look at Haley Van Lith and what the game she's put up, you look at Angel Reese and the things LSU did. And then you look at Caitlyn Clark, shooting deep threes. She was the Steph Curry of the tournament. Like she was Diana Taurasi. She was Paige Beckers. Like she did it all. And so I truly do believe, like, in my opinion, maybe that is partly portal, maybe that is partly NIL. But that was kind of my takeaway from the two. Like the women's had way more. Even the you can't see me, and we'll talk about that in the Daily 3, but the you can't see me from from Caitlyn Clark to Haley Van Lith, John Cena jumped on board, and then Angel Reese did it back to her. And the reason for it, one, she was a little bit upset that Caitlyn Clark waved off her friend in the game. You know, like everybody knows that it hit national news. She saw her up there. She's like, I'm not going to guard her. And she left her up there. Now, one, she didn't have to wave her off like that. She could have just stayed and played defense. Well, she knows she did. Like somebody was like, oh, she did that by mistake. She didn't do that by mistake. She was like, girl, go ahead and shoot that, which is fine. Who cares? Like I do that to the people do that in the gym all the time. Men do it in men's game all the time. Like, dude, he's self-check. Let him shoot. Shoot the ball. I dare you. Shoot it. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, we're making big news out of this because it's women's sports and we're not dialed in as much. And then when we are, like Caitlyn Clark, we're like, whoa, I didn't know this happens in women's sports. Whoa, I didn't know this goes on. Yes, Haley Van Lith is the biggest trash talker in college basketball. That's why Caitlyn Clark did it to her, because she knows she just yaps. Because the game before that, Haley Van Lith got into it with a girl from, I think, Texas or something, or somebody. I forgot who it was, but they got into it. And she told her, yeah, have fun in Miami. Get out of my face. Down the handshake line. Like, Haley Van Lith is known for that. So Haley Van Lith does that. Then Caitlyn Clark does this. And then Angel Reese does it back. Like, it's the butterfly effect. If Haley Van Lith doesn't do that to that girl, Caitlyn Clark probably doesn't do that to Haley Van Lith. And then Angel Reese probably doesn't get a chance to do that to Caitlyn Clark. It's all a butterfly effect. And that's the problem with this, is people are making too big of it. But again, the women's had more moments like that. Like San Diego State, their one shining moment is going to be that, like, if they win, if they beat UConn, we're going to see that last minute drive down the court, step, shoot, blah, blah, whatever the one shining moment is. But I don't know, Sam, what was your takeaway from the Final Four of men's and women's?
Well, I just think that it's cool that we get to learn who all these women's players are, and then they're going to come back. Yep. Like Caitlyn Clark is going to come back and play again next year, and all eyes are going to be on her. Whereas in the men's tournament, if you see a player of that caliber, odds are they're either going pro or they're switching teams. Like, that just seems to be the culture now, right? If you have any measure of success, unless you're already at a Duke or a UNC, or you're at the pinnacle already, if there's room for you to elevate and go play for a better program or a better conference for a better coach, most guys are taking that opportunity, and then you lose track of them.
Right.
You say, oh, I got to know them during the tournament last year, and they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a little bit frustrating. And that's why I don't think there's much star power in the men's side to really carry things. San Diego State, Ron, has one double-figure scorer. And I'd give you three guesses. I don't know if you could come up with the guy's name. I didn't know it until I looked it up.
The last shot guy?
No, not him.
Oh, sorry.
No, Matt Bradley is the guy. And Connecticut's got Adama Sanogo.
Yep.
Great player.
Yep. I watched that.
But a lot of people don't know who that is.
No.
Like, not a household name, certainly. So I totally agree with you. I think that there's been a real dynamic quality to this women's tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Why'd they play the game in the afternoon? Like, why did they not put that game in prime? That was kind of
that was weird to me too. Yeah. That was because we were actually practicing softball, my daughter, and my wife was like watching, yelling off the score as we're and I'm like, wait, what? I'm like, why are they playing right now? It's like 3-4 o'clock. And so even that, like the men, like that's one thing. If the men played at 3 o'clock today, people would be so upset. They play at like 7 or 8 o'clock tonight. Mm-hmm. Like, why wouldn't the women play at 8 o'clock on Sunday night? Like, it's just because I saw what's her name, Holly Rowe, and she tweeted like the picture of the LSU people outside watching the game, and she said, if you build it, they'll come. If you show it, they'll watch. I agree. I do believe that. Like, I believe if you put enough of good and that's the problem though, it has to be good games. But I also say this is and again, this might be the wrong take, but I see a ton of college baseball being put on TV, and some of these games are extremely boring. I'm not a baseball guy, so maybe that's part of it. I quit baseball in my sophomore year in high school. I had enough of it. I played it all my life growing up. My dad was a player. Baseball. He actually was a better baseball player than he was football. But he grew up in the 70s. And so, I mean, the stories in the 70s, baseball and African Americans just weren't seen to be on the same side. It didn't seem like it would fit always. It was small. I mean, we can go all the way back to Jackie Robinson though. It was all we know the whole story of baseball and the pastime and the way people looked at it. So a kid coming out of Detroit, baseball played catcher, and he was 6 feet, 210 pounds as a catcher. That's a big catcher in any league. Like he lost weight when he started playing DB and got down to like 195. But for a baseball season, he bulked up. I don't know if he was on steroids. That was probably steroids for high school kids. I don't think they were taking steroids, but he's a 6 foot, 210 pound catcher. So when you think about that, when you think about baseball and how that gets on TV, and then you look at like rugby every once in a while, or not rugby, sorry, lacrosse ends up on TV. College basketball, women's college basketball, and again, I'm not saying WNBA because I feel like the WNBA still has to start building these names and putting these rosters together. And they're trying this year. You can see like New York loading up. You can see the Aces with Kelsey Plum. You got to put those stars on TV. The problem is like Sue Bird, Diana Taurasi, all these greats are getting old. Like they're done. Rebecca Lobo, the names we remember. And so now they got to start building up these newer names. But we're not seeing it, But college basketball, again, Caitlyn Clark, when her and Paige, and hopefully Paige Beckers gets back next year, Caitlyn Clark and Paige Beckers, that's what people want to see. Even the fact now that Minnesota, like, I'm pretty sure Minnesota versus Iowa women's basketball probably just sold out tickets already. Like, people are already like, okay, I got to see Iowa when they come to Minnesota.
Probably all the Iowa fans, honestly. They traveled.
They do try. I mean, I was one. I think I tweeted that out. Like, I'm looking forward to going to the barn, taking my kids down to see. Because, and I hate to say this, Lindsay Whalen used to always invite us and say, hey, when you get a chance. And the problem too, though, in winter is my kids' sports, volleyball and all that stuff in school. Like, it's just trying to find a day to go to some of this stuff. But I never really went. And now I'm going to try to go for sure. With, to see Caitlyn Clark, like to go watch Iowa versus Minnesota in the barn. Like, I'm looking forward to that. So that's going to be, I think, the next step for this is like building it, the NIL. You see how much money Caitlyn Clark's getting now. You saw how much money Paige Beckers got. They're going to have to continue to build this. And same with LSU, those girls at South Carolina, like their NILs and their stuff, these coaches, Dawn Staley, they have to keep building it and keeping it. And honestly, the arguments are part of it. Like the pettiness off the court, the Twitter beef. Like, we love the Twitter beef between NBA, but then we hate it with girls doing it. Like when girls argue or say stuff or hey, I got something for her, they're mad at it. But when like Pat Bev talked about getting back at LeBron for days and we ate it up. But then this girl says, oh, I've been waiting to get to Caitlyn Clark. Oh, it's premeditated. I can't believe that. That's stupid. It's so premeditated. Like if it was a legit celebration, but she was a lot of celebrations are premeditated. A lot of arguments, like Austin Reeves. When Pat Bev did that to Jordan, Austin Reeves, his was premeditated because he's like, oh, you did this to LeBron? Oh, I got you. Okay. And his wasn't even a big man moment. He just shot a shot over him and then did the little man thing because he's like, you did that to LeBron. I'm going to do it back to you. And we ate it up. But we got to move on to the Daily 3. That's 3 questions, 3 minutes each. Got some hot topics coming up in the Daily 3, so I'm looking forward to that. But remember, you can check out the Locked On Sports Minnesota podcast on YouTube. Following every Twins, Vikings, Wild, or Wolves game, our Locked On team hosts are broadcasting live with team insiders. Never miss a podcast by subscribing to the Locked On Sports Minnesota YouTube channel. And also, wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, iHeart, the free iHeart app, wherever you get them, make sure you subscribe and follow. You can go to the iHeart app, search Locked On Sports Minnesota, just hit follow. So whenever you're in your iHeart app, our podcast will pop up. You can just listen to it on the treadmill, whatever, get some quick sports. And we have a word from our sponsors.
Well, we just finished up the month of March, which means that there's going to be a winner at BuiltMarchMadness.com. Somebody got a 12-month subscription of Built to have delivered to their door, and 50 lucky Locked On listeners got a free box of Built. People voted all through the month of March at BuiltMarchMadness.com for their favorite bars and puffs, and there are so many options to vote for. You've got these delicious flavors, all 100% real chocolate, low sugar, low calories, high protein in the best protein bars in the entire universe. They are so good, you won't even believe that they're good for you. Hopefully you voted at BuiltMarchMadness.com. And hopefully you picked up a box or two while you were there.
Well, it's time for the Daily 3. Sam gets to run the show. That's 3 questions, 3 minutes each. Take it away.
All right, Ron, let's get your Caitlyn Clark, Angel Reese opinion, the LSU Iowa National Championship game. LSU wins the championship. Angel Reese, let Caitlyn Clark know about it. A lot of people were critical of Angel Reese, but Caitlyn Clark had made the same gesture in a previous game. So what's your take on the whole fiasco?
Well, first off, Haley Van Lith started this. She was super disrespectful in the handshake line. I don't know who they lost to or beat. It was Bowling Green, maybe, or Texas or somebody. I got to go back and look at that. But she got into it with a girl and said, yeah, have fun in Miami or something like that. And then you go back to the fast forward to Caitlyn Clark. I think this is the Elite Eight. Caitlyn Clark in the Elite Eight beats Louisville. As she's walking to her bench, she looks over at Haley Van Lith, hits her with the "you can't see me." Fast forward that, then you go to the Iowa South Carolina game in the Final Four. Caitlyn Clark does the girl, go ahead and shoot it. At that point, LSU was there because it's the Final Four, because LSU's playing in the same building. They saw that. They felt that, or at least Angel Reese felt that was disrespectful to her homegirl that played for South Carolina. She's like, man, you ain't got to be disrespectful. You don't got to guard her, but that's a little bit disrespectful. So in her mind, she's like, look, I'm going to get my get back. If we win, I got something for you. And so at one point in the game, she hits her with it, moves on. Now she could have stopped there. And that's where everybody's at arms about. She then, at the end of the game, total of 10 seconds, because I counted. She starts walking, and technically 10 seconds wasn't even the "you see me." The actual "you see me" was about 3 to 5 seconds. She follows her to make sure she sees her. She hits her with the "you see me" just to make sure she gets to say, yo, 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 and she hits her with it. And then she does the "I'm getting my ring." That's what people say is not sportsmanlike, it's not sportsman. But you got people calling her an a-hole. You got people calling her an idiot. And these are grown men on Twitter, grown with big time jobs. Talking about Danny Cannell, talking about Kevin Overman, big time jobs. And you're calling a girl, a 20-year-old, 21-year-old girl woman, an idiot, a son of a B, a classless piece of shit, and you think that's okay. First of all, it's a woman. So I got a problem with that. I have a complete problem with that. You can't just call a woman, especially, and again, I don't want to make this about race, but a white man calling a black woman a classless piece of, come on now. What are we doing? That to me just goes too far. And so here's where I go with this. Could she have probably stayed away from that? But they had been doing the ring thing. If you remember, Elite Eight, the one girl drew a ring on her finger saying, hey, our ring's coming. So that was their thing. The ring thing had been LSU's thing, that they were going to get their ring finally. She didn't need to do it to her. She did the "you see me" already. After the game, I personally say, leave it alone. You already beat her. Don't kick anybody while they're down. But if you're going to be a trash talker like Haley Van Lith, if you're going to be a trash talker, you got to be able to take it. Haley Van Lith is a big time trash talker. That's why Caitlyn Clark did that to her. And that's why she just took it and walked off the court. Caitlyn Clark also, that's why she walked off the court, because she knew. She's like, look, y'all beat me, fine. I can't say anything. I'm going to walk off the court. Because people are like, oh, she was raised right because she didn't respond. What was she going to do? What was she really going to do? That's not, not to say it should be a fight. She's not going to fight them. Come on. Stop that. What are we doing here? The point is men do this all the time. Pat Bev talking LeBron. You got Austin Reeves followed up with Pat Bev. Men do it all the time. Men trash talk, you too little, you do this, arms, and celebrate. Girls say it all the time. If I block a shot and I show emotion, it's a tech. If a guy blocks a shot and he yells into the crowd, it's celebrated. It's true. Men's and women's sports, we have to change that narrative. We have to stop expecting women's sports to be a little bit different than men's sports. And that's the reality. That's the harsh reality we live in. This is getting blown up. And it's like this has become another polarizing topic. Some people are celebrating it. I have no problem with some people. Oh, she shouldn't have done that. Why she got to follow for 10 seconds? Why is there a rule? If you punch somebody and then somebody punches you back twice, you can't say, hey, I only hit you once. You can't hit me twice. You're in a fight. You can't decide what my retaliation is. There's no rules around the retaliation. If you do something to me and I do something back to you, you can't pick and choose. So that's my thought on it. Did she go too far? Maybe. But who cares? You can't call her a classless piece of crap and all this other stuff. Come on, man. Some people went way too far. Other than that, it was a great game. Caitlyn Clark did her thing, 30 points. Angel Reese, people are forgetting the other side of this. She had 15 points. She had 10 boards. She had 0 turnovers. Caitlyn Clark had 6. She went at it. She had 3 steals. Caitlyn Clark had none. Angel Reese did her thing. She was the number 2 player in the country when she came out of high school. Put some respect on it. Now, again, she went a little too far, yeah, but the Bayou Barbie, she was emotional in that moment. When she looks back on this, maybe a couple years from now, she'll be like, yeah, I might have went too far. But her and Caitlyn Clark might end up teammates with the Mystics or something. Who knows? With the Lynx. They might both end up as the Lynx, and we'll love them both. But the one thing I will say about Caitlyn Clark, because I'm going to go a little long on this one, because I'm not going to spend as much time on the Twins, nothing against the Twins. But Caitlyn Clark did something that I didn't think any person could ever do in Iowa. She made Minnesotans root for Iowa, because I was totally rooting for Caitlyn Clark up until the championship game. That championship game, I didn't care. But up through it, I was rooting for Caitlyn Clark. I was hoping she beat, South Carolina. I was rooting for her. But in the championship, I was like, I don't really care, because I was glad she made the championship, but then also I thought about it like, I don't really want to hear Iowa fans for the rest of this year talk about they won a championship. Like, I don't want to hear that. So I was okay with them losing the championship to LSU. I don't know, Sam, what were your thoughts on that LSU championship game?
Yeah, I would guess that most of the critics of Angel Reese so Keith Olbermann's a good example. So Olbermann was super critical, comes back this morning, and he apologizes and basically says, I didn't know any of the context.
Exactly.
And you've laid out well in this segment what the context is, and that there was a backstory. There were previous games that led up to that. And I would bet a lot of people that were vocally critical probably didn't know any of the context, probably didn't know the situation. And they see Angel Reese doing that, and yeah, she probably went too far, and they call her out on it. And I think that's, again, people aren't as informed about the women's game as they should be, or as informed as they are about the men's game. So they just tweet stuff without knowing all the information. I think that's what I saw a lot of people that tuned in for the championship and hadn't seen another game. So you just don't know who the characters are in that kind of saga. Right. I didn't see the game. I was at a St. Thomas hockey banquet, but from my understanding, there was some refereeing controversy. People were upset about the officiating. I can't weigh in on any of that. Too bad it wasn't a closer game, but the whole build up to it was great. The Final Four was great in the women's side. So it's cool to see that the women's game is getting, I think, just as much attention as the men's Final Four right now.
Yeah, I will say to the reffing, Kim Mulkey was on the court twice, but also Coach K used to do that too, and he never got a text. So, it happens when you're one of the great coaches of the time. You get away with some stuff because the ref ran by her and kind of pushed her off the court, like back up. That was her warning. She came on the court again, but she didn't run into a ref. She was like all the way up to half court almost. But Coach Case uses it all the time. Caitlyn Clark throws the ball, like gets mad about a call, throws the ball like off the court. That's a tech. You got to give the ball back you can't just throw the ball. Like she threw it like sideways, and so it went off the court. So when they saw that, they teed her up. But I don't know. What you got next?
Yeah, the Minnesota Twins are 3-0, Ron. And here's the best part. The first 3 games of the season were played in 2:32, 2:18, and 2:35. The pitch clock is working. The games are flying by, and the Twins are winning. What's your takeaway from the opening weekend of baseball?
Oh, one, they're undefeated. There's only 3 undefeated teams left, the Tampa Bay Rays and the Texas Rangers. So, one, let's not celebrate undefeated in the first weekend. Like, let's not. Because that's Minnesota jinx at its best. Like, literally. They could literally lose the next 10, and we're 3-10, and everybody's like, oh, my God, season's over. Where's the pitching? Why don't we have pitchers? But I do say this. The pitch clock might be working in their favor. When you don't have, like, great ace pitchers, you kind of even the playing field with speed. Like they're having to play faster. They're having to pitch faster. They don't have time to think about the pitch and move the ball around and do all the junk they do. So I'm a fan of it. I'm to the point where I'm looking at games now. Like I'm not going out there in this weather, but when it's in the 60s, I'm looking at games like we can take the kids out. And normally we would go for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then we leave because we're like, all right, this is but hey, if I know 2:12, 2:30, it's gonna be done. Hey. This is I'm looking forward. Like I'm actually like I'm coaching my daughter's 8U. I'm looking to like reach out to all the parents. Hey, do we want to take all the 8U girls to a game? My daughter's club team. Hey, should we take all the girls to a baseball game with the Twins? Like 2:30, I could do that. That 3.5. I mean, I was at a game, I think one time it was 3 hours and 50 minutes. It was ridiculous. I left after like 3:10, 3:20. And I looked on the news the next day. It was like 3:50. It was way too much crap with the pitchers and the batters. And so hopefully this just changes the game. I think it's worth it if you're going to get more money and more time and more stuff done. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. My thought is that if you are on FanDuel and you want to try to have an edge early in the season, I'd bet the unders. I would look at every game, bet the under, and see if you come out on top, because this first weekend, I'm seeing these scores. It looks like it's advantage pitchers with this pitch clock, because the scores are way down. The Twins played a couple 2-0 games. There's a lot of 3-1, 4-1, 2-0, 2-1 games. And I wonder if the hitters are actually thrown off more by this pitch clock than the pitchers are. So bet the unders, see if you can get a little advantage here early in the season before the lines adjust. I think
I've been interested to see where the Astros finish, because they don't have time to steal signs anymore. They can't steal can't steal the pitch sign. They don't have time.
Exactly. Yeah. They should have done this years ago. All right. Last one in the Daily 3. You brought this up on KFAN yesterday. We filled in for Dan Barrero on Sunday's sermons. The Vikings were power ranked 8th on PFF's pre-draft power rankings. What do you think about that? Number 8, too high, too low, or just right?
I think it's just right. Here's the problem with these early things anyway. It says pre-draft, so they're already like throwing in an asterisk by it. Like, okay, this is pre-draft. We don't know what's going to happen in the draft. And honestly, when you think about the draft, the Vikings only have 5 picks. So what can they really get out the draft that's going to like help them stay there? But like, it's only going to take like some of these teams with these early first round picks to jump them, because the Panthers, when they get CJ Stroud, they're going to put them up in the top 15, I'm guessing. And all the pieces they're adding. When the Packers or the Jets, if the trade happens with Aaron Rodgers, all of a sudden, boom, he's going to be up there. To me, I get it, but you look at the NFC, the teams in front of the Vikings right now, and I think it's right. You got the 49ers ahead of the Eagles. I don't get that one, but whatever. But you got the 49ers, Eagles, and then you got the Cowboys, and then you have the Vikings. So you have the Vikings finish 4th in the deal. That means they play the 5. Because 3 plays the 6, 2 plays the 7. So that means they would play the 5 seed. So they get to host a home game for the playoffs. I think 13 wins, nothing changed. They got, like you said, I liked your comment. They got rid of some pieces. The pieces they added weren't technically better, but they filled voids. So 8th, I think right now is just right. We'll see what happens after the draft, though. I think I don't know if there's something at the 23 spot they really need, unless something just happens. Like, again, Anthony Richardson ends up there, or there's a quarterback. You're like, whoa, I didn't think this guy would drop, because Aaron Rodgers wasn't supposed to drop to 24. So there could be a quarterback that drops all of a sudden, one of the guys we all are high on, and then he ends up sitting in the green room like Aaron Rodgers did. So you never, or Lamar Jackson, same thing. Like, he sat there till the end. So you just never know. But yeah, I think it's just right. I don't know. What are your thoughts?
I thought it was actually a little higher than I expected. I thought that the Vikings would kind of drop in the power rankings just because of the guys they lost. People kind of cold on them after the playoff exit in the first round. So, so pleasantly surprised actually by that ranking. Like I said on the radio yesterday, Brian Flores is the key to this whole thing. If Brian Flores can fix the defense, even with some pieces that might not be as good as they had last year with Dalvin Tomlinson and Patrick Peterson and Eric Kendricks, that could be the difference maker.
Yeah. Well, that'll do it for us today on the Ron Johnson Show. I'm Ron Johnson. That's Sam Ekstrom. We want to thank you guys. Also, FanDuel, we truly thank you for everything you're doing. Please make sure, people, championship game tonight, you still got time to go get those bets for the thing. There's a lot of prop bets. There's parlays, over, under, points score, players that are going to score certain points, blah, blah, first shot, all that. Go check it out on FanDuel.com/locked on, as that is our official sponsor right now for Locked On Sports. I'm Ron Johnson. Again, that's Sam Ekstrom. And remember, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. If you go to iTunes, Spotify, iHeart, wherever you get your podcasts, just hit the follow and subscribe button to the podcast, because we truly enjoy it. But every time we upload a show or a little small 13-minute clip, you'll get it right there on your podcast feed. I want to thank you. Have a great day.